We're talking about the radiation levels, and you were mentioning there in the headlines about the dangerously high levels outside the gate. Well, we can clarify that situation for you. Now, there was a record reading inside the premises of the reactor itself, inside the reactor, not at the gate. Now, that record reading was dangerous to humans. That was at 400 millisieverts. But outside the gate, that has dropped dramatically. It is now at a level that is no longer considered to pose a threat to people. That is outside the gate. Inside the gate, it was a record high. Outside the gate, it has now dropped dramatically over the past few hours to a level where they consider it not a threat to people. Now, we're talking so much about radiation and exactly what it is, the potential dangers and the potential risks. What we need to clarify here is what sort of radiation we're talking about. Now, there is radioactive material that is created inside the reactor, uranium and its byproducts. There is also radioactive material that is released into the atmosphere when they vent, when they release steam to relieve pressure from the reactor's core. Now, that's considered to be a secondary type. They call it noble gases, and it is less dangerous. We've been speaking to our contributing analyst, Jim Walsh, who's an expert in this, and this is what he had to say about the various types of radiation.
Not all radiation is created equal. We hear the word radiation and we immediately leap to thinking cancer. But there are several things to keep in mind. First of all, there's some radioactive elements, they last, less than a second. Some last tens of thousands of years. Then there's a sort of intensity. Some may be highly radioactive, cesium or iodine, and others not radioactive at all. And then there's the type of radiation that's emitted. People forget there are at least 3 different types of radiation. Some radiation, gamma radiation, can penetrate the skin. That's a big deal. But other types of radiation will not penetrate the skin, so that you can wash it off and it doesn't affect you.
Now, the concern here is about this explosion at reactor number 2, and did it actually damage the outer casing, the protective layer that surrounds the reactor's core? If that is the case, there could be some of the more nasty stuff seeping out. They don't know that yet. So at the moment, they're trying to identify exactly what that radiation is. They've continued this 20 kilometre, 12-mile no-go zone. People have been evacuated. They're saying people within a 30-kilometre zone, lock your windows, close your doors, and make sure that you stay inside. In Tokyo, there's been also a reading, a very, very low-level reading of radiation, albeit twice as high as normal, but not enough to pose any direct risk. Andrew?
Stan, I just want to come back to the explosion in the reactor, which may or may not have affected the containment vessel which houses the reactor core. When will we know whether that containment vessel has been compromised in a significant way, if at all?
Yeah, it really comes down to when they can get in and inspect. There's been a lot of talk in recent days about the fuel rods being exposed for dangerously long periods of time, about the water levels dropping, and potentially the risk or the possibility of a partial meltdown. Well, they're basing that on all of their assumptions from what they're seeing, but until they get to a point where they can get in there and actually have a look, they're not going to know. So they needed to cool down to that point. And they've been talking about the suppression chamber possibly being damaged in this explosion, this hydrogen explosion this morning. The suppression chamber is connected to this outer protective layer that you've been talking about. I can also bring you up to date on the situation of trying to cool those reactors. We understand that water is continuing to flow into reactors 1, 2 and 3. They're being described in this news conference we just heard from officials as being stable. However, reactors 5 and 6, they're now reading as rising in temperature a little as well. So a very fluid situation indeed.